So I noticed a few months back that Toplitz was planning on releasing their next Dynasty installment, Sengoku Dynasty. Now I have been aware that Toplitz has many Dynasty games in the series, but I've been a bit skeptical to pick them up for a couple of reasons, including different developers for each installment and mixed user ratings on a few of their games. But a Dynasty game set in the feudal era of Japan was captivating to me, so I was willing to give the Super Kami developers a chance. Now that I've put a bit of time into this game, I thought I'd offer my thoughts on whether this game is worth buying at the moment, and some suggestions on what improvements could be made to the game. Now keep in mind, this game is in early access, so it's obvious this game's not going to be complete, and I'm going to be taking that into account in this video. But I'll get more into that at the end of the video. So let's have a look, shall we? To start on the positives and first impressions, open world feudal era is just awesome. I attribute much of my interest to being a big fan of Inuyasha as a kid, but the feudal time period is the perfect setting for a Dynasty game. I'm a big fan of the shrine visuals, house designs, and Miko priestesses present in the villages. There are also a lot of artistic cutscenes spread out through the game that give the game a very cool aesthetic. I really like the idea of offerings to shrines for temporary buffs as you're playing. It's definitely a unique aspect to this game. On top of that, this game released with multiplayer, which is already ahead of the curve compared to other Dynasty games. Now I haven't had my chance to try the multiplayer in the game yet, but the fact that it's out on release is awesome. Now the map is beautiful and expansive, although it is a bit barren at the moment. The weather effects are really cool, and the story and quests have that similar charm to that of like Medieval Dynasty quests. Another unique aspect I like about this game are the special project construction workshops. The first time you use this is to build a bridge leading outside of your town, but the idea of being able to add these permanent changes to the map is satisfying, and I would love to see something like this in the other Dynasty games. Well, let's talk about the needed improvements, starting with the big one. This game is poorly optimized. I'm talking major memory leaks. I suspect this is something that will get better in future updates, but as of now, when running this game, I will have major frame rate issues regardless of high or low settings. There is no pause button for single player at the moment, and my only guess as to why is because it's probably the same pause mechanic that you're using when you're playing co-op, which makes sense why you wouldn't be able to pause, but I feel like this is going to be a necessary change for a single player playthrough. Currently there are no voice line options, so I feel like I'm speaking to brick walls when I'm talking to NPCs. But this is partially expected this early on. I want to say it took Medieval Dynasty like 2 years before dialogue was added to NPCs. I don't run into them a lot, but there are some minor UI issues. The biggest one I run into is that I changed my pickup key binding to my middle mouse button, and the words middle mouse button will often cover parts of the interface. Also, fall damage seems to be a bit crazy. It's hard to tell whether a fall is going to kill you or not, but on a positive note, jumping off cliffs is a great way for fast traveling. But really, if you choose to unstuck in the menu, you won't actually die, but you'll be fast traveled back to your village, which I doubt will stay in the game forever. It is possible to abuse this mechanic right now once you build a second village and a new house. If you set yourself up in a house and unstuck, it'll teleport you back to the house, which is the best way to travel around the valley right now. But hopefully a more built-in fast travel mechanic is added in the future. Also, the amount of storage buildings feel a bit unnecessary and I don't feel like they're needed. I'm primarily talking about the wood storage. If this is a design choice, it makes me wonder why we don't have like mineral storage buildings, since they currently go into the general storage with all the other tools and items. I see logs and stacks a bit as a fundamental problem due to the lack of stacking on some items, since this game doesn't really have a built-in encumbrance system and relies on inventory slots. And the fact that every building relies on so much wood, whether it's planks, sticks, or logs. I also kind of find it odd that planks will stack to 20, which is a little bit over 3 logs, but the logs themselves only really stack to 1. I think a good fix for this would be to have the logs stacked to 3 or 4 in your inventory, if this is the inventory management system that's going to stay. There will be a lot of familiarity though for players who have maybe played Medieval Dynasty in the past, so those that have will have a bit of an advantage when starting this game. But they aren't necessarily as similar as you would expect from the start. From what I've seen on Discord and the reviews, this game is bringing a lot of new players who haven't necessarily played Dynasty games before, with Sengoku Dynasty being their first one. I suspect Super Kami is going to have to deal with the constant comparisons to Medieval Dynasty. I hope that doesn't discourage them, but instead use that feedback comparison as an example of what works, along with adding unique mechanics that make the game earn its own place. But I would like to talk about some mechanics Medieval Dynasty has, which can be more ideas on how to better polish Sengoku Dynasty. For starters, Something I would like to see is the custom game options. In Medieval Dynasty, you have the ability to change encumbrance, health, stamina, fast crafting, fast building, so on and so forth. Now, I may be spoiled by the game options in Medieval Dynasty, but I think having those options in game would definitely allow the players to determine how grindy they want their game to be, as the game can be a major grind in the early game when it comes to cutting down trees for logs, sticks, and planks. Building, in my opinion, just takes a bit too much wood to build anything, and almost everything requires wood. I do like how the woodcutter's hut does produce more sticks and planks, which saves you a lot on that grind. It does help that villagers help with this grind a bit, but I feel like I needed maybe 2 or 3 villagers to be farming logs for me, because you only get resources from villagers once a season, and it really doesn't seem like enough. And it'd be nice if the wood was sprinkled on in between the season, you know? Inventory management, or simply being able to auto-equip tools after building them, would also be a nice addition. It can be a little tedious to break tools and then have to go into your inventory and then re-equip them, while in Medieval Dynasty you can kind of just press a key after you build it, and it will auto-equip it for you. It is nice that tools will auto-equip if you have an extra tool in your inventory already, but this would just be a nice improvement. Farming and animal husbandry is another one. While I'm sure this is something they plan to add later, it isn't in the game at the moment, but I'm looking forward to animal husbandry. It would be nice to have goats, sheep, chicken, pigs, and cattle added when that time comes. Reliable fast traveling with like wagons or a wagon building, ammo retrieval from skinning, resource respawn, tree fall damage, and stealing repercussions are just a few things I can think of that would add a bit more immersion to Sengoku Dynasty. Overall though, with a game that has been out in early access for less than a month, I'm looking forward to see some upcoming updates where this game will go in the future. It's clearly a work in progress, and I consider it in its alpha stages right now. A lot of people go into early access games thinking it means you just get to play the game early, but you are 9 out of 10 times paying to play an unfinished game. It doesn't make much sense for me to rate the game based on its alpha stages because it's not really in its intended stage. However, that doesn't mean this game is absolved of all criticism. If anything, this is the time to give the game as much constructive feedback as possible. If you go to the Toplit's Discord, they actually have a channel where you can give feedback. So on whether you should buy Sengoku Dynasty right now, if you're okay with playing an unfinished game and interested in either supporting the developers or giving feedback while they work on developing the game, I would say it's worth buying. If you don't like playing early access games and want to experience a polished design, maybe come back in a year and see how it's going. I think this game though has the potential to be as good as Medieval Dynasty, but it's far from the polish that game is currently at. Since the game is released though, Super Kami has put out 2 bug patches, so while I'm hopeful, only time will tell. Medieval Dynasty was in early access for over a year, and it wasn't nearly as good as it is now, and a lot of polishing was added even a year after the game was released. I imagine this game's going to be in a much different state in a year, hopefully for the better. I may give updates on the state of the game as time goes, so if that sounds interesting to you, feel free to drop a like or subscribe to my channel. If you're new to the channel and like or are interested in Medieval Dynasty, I suggest you check out my Medieval Dynasty videos for more Dynasty content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.